A big hello to all of you joining across the continent and beyond today for another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time today, we're all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world, and everything we do goes to our YouTube channel, so you can check out this program in like 3 weeks, or 3 years, or 4,000 other broadcasts, including at least 50 with your Toronto Zoo. Lots to explore and discover right there. Now, of all the days to join us, I'm so happy you're joining us today because we are smack dab in the middle. Program 3 of 5 in our epic Guardians of Wild series in collaboration with the Toronto Zoo. So Guardians of Wild is all about highlighting conservation, animal care, science as it works to help save species both at the zoo and on planet Earth. It's been one of the most fun series I've had in quite some time, and we've got 2 more shows coming up next week and the week after. So I hope you'll head there, sign up for all of them. There's lots to explore and discover. Now today, we've got a particularly big topic and one that has really interested our audience from around the world, which is food production. How do we make sure all the animals at the zoo stay happy and healthy? We've got all sorts of great stories on this, and there's a lot to cover with all sorts of speakers in multiple locations today. So I'm going to zip it. I'm going to turn you over to Mary Ellen, our educator extraordinaire, to dive in with our multi-speaker extravaganza, and I can't wait for all your questions and enthusiasm online. So without further ado, Mary Ellen, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Jesse. I love your introductions. They get better with every single program that we do here together. They just really pump us all up, get us excited and ready to speak about all of our conservation efforts and our incredible topic today, as you kind of tease, about the nutrition of our animals here at the zoo, how we grow sustainable food, different ways that we can be helpful at home, or also different tips and tricks for us. And what better animal to learn about that with today than maybe one of our biggest eaters here at the zoo. You might be able to get a clue from who's standing here behind us. We're going to learn all about these amazing giants here behind us in just a moment with our Guardians of Wild series. I'm going to introduce you to 2 of my amazing colleagues doing some of the work here, feet on the ground, Sarah and Ben. Ben's out right now. He's going to be in a second location for us, which we'll get to see another part of the zoo today, which will be fantastic. But before we get started with all of this amazing program fun, Jesse, I'm going to have you bring up our land acknowledgement here for us. And we would like to acknowledge that the land that we are standing on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We would also like to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. All right, thank you so much, Jesse, for bringing that up here for us. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over, and I would like to introduce everyone to one of my colleagues here and dear friends, Sarah, and we're going to learn a little bit more about our nutrition side of the Toronto Zoo. Take it away, Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Really, really excited to talk about food with you guys. I would be amiss if I didn't introduce our other guest, our beautiful Maasai giraffe female, Mastari. So she's going to be joining us, and we'll talk a little bit about her ecology and how we feed giraffe here at the Toronto Zoo. But what I'm really excited to talk about is this holistic plan that we have here at the Toronto Zoo to help feed our herbivore animals. So I'm wondering, what are some of your favorite herbivorous foods to eat at home? Is it maybe a salad? Maybe it's mangoes? Maybe shoot it in the chat, and love to read out some of your favorite foods.
If you do want to share in the chat, by the way, I will note as we go through the zoo program, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, please do share. For me personally, I was a born carnivore and then I married a vegetarian. So I like all the vegetables now because they're all I eat. So mango is a particularly good choice. And if you've got your own picks, please do highlight them.
Amazing. And so one of the big things about our herbivores is that we have such a diverse group. Here in front of us, we have our Maasai giraffe, which is a very unique type of feeder. She is a browser. And what that means is that she eats something that we call browse, which is really leaves off of trees. And that's really important as we talk about the different types of foods that we have here at the Toronto Zoo. But what I'd really like to first start with is, why would we want to grow any of our own foods here? So Jesse, I'm going to get you to cue up the first picture, which is of climate change. So I think it's really important when we talk about food production here at the zoo or globally that we recognize. Why would we do this? A huge portion of greenhouse gas emissions are emitted through food systems. So that could be through agriculture, it could be through shipping and packaging, but a large portion is just from waste from home. All of these collectively can contribute to worsening the climate situation and raising the global temperatures. Raising the global temperatures is very challenging for a lot of our species. They've evolved over millennia with the environment, and with this rapidly changing environment, they're trying to keep up. A really emblematic species, when we talk about climate change, you can see in the photo here, is polar bears. Their habitat and their way of living is being drastically impacted by climate change. And so part of the real reason why we want to start our journey of growing foods here at the Toronto Zoo to feed all of our animals is, how do we help empower people to make meaningful actions within their lives to help action against climate change. And so one of the very first things I'd like to talk about is all of the different types of foods that we're looking to feed here at the Toronto Zoo. So as I mentioned, we have Mastari here as a browser, and that first photo on our types of foods is browse. The second one is something that you might recognize, and that's a piece of kale. So we're also looking to produce vegetables and fruits on site seasonally, because we live here in Canada and we don't have these extended growing seasons, but we'll chat about that a little bit later. And then the third type of green that you might see on the screen in front of you is actually a herb. It's basil. And for some of our species, that could be really enriching as sensory enrichment. Our herbs are very fragrant and give off a lot of smell. But for some of our species, herbs are a great nutrition source for them, particularly some of our herbivorous reptiles. The fourth image is actually something that we call grasses or forbs. We're going to talk about that a little bit later when we speak of one of our new farms that we're growing, where we're trying to grow very specific things to support a very specific program on here, which is our Vancouver Island marmots. And lastly, something that we're just starting to explore is actually hydroponically grown greens. And that's something that's really interesting to integrate into our food system because we can grow local food all year round, which again is really hard here in Canada when we have these harsh winters that knock back all of our trees and our growing season. So we're going to move on to the holistic approach to food production. And we have a couple goals of what we want to accomplish. First and foremost, we want to support animal well-being. And that is supporting everything there is about an animal's health. So that is physiological, so their insides and how they work, morphological, so how they've evolved to acquire food, and of course, behaviorally, which is a very, very important part of keeping our animals busy, because many of the species that call home, the Toronto Zoo home, spend upwards of 20 hours foraging for food in the wild, and we want to try to mimic that. Secondly, we would like to speak about our priorities about sustainable and resilient practices. So that means that when we start a project or start a farming project here at the zoo, it's something that can have minimal impact on our environment, so the air, the water, and the land, and also something that we can maintain for years to come. So we're looking for decades of resilient practices. Thirdly, animal food security. So being able to grow things locally means that we're able to secure a source of food for our animals. It also means that we're not competing with the human food supply chain because we're growing our own food. That's really important. And third, on animal food security, is because we have amazing horticulture staff that can grow incredibly unique plants from all over the world, we can have our animals gain access to nutrients that they otherwise wouldn't be able to access with our common foods here that we have available to us here in North America. And of course, incredibly important is how can we use our food production systems to support climate action? And part of that is if we can grow food here, we don't actually have to have it shipped in from other parts of the world. So we're reducing our greenhouse gas or our carbon emissions, which is really critical because you would imagine with over 3,000 individuals, we have a lot of food coming in to feed every single animal from jellyfish to giraffe and pigeon to polar bear. So anything we can do to reduce those emissions is a check mark, and that's really a check in the right direction. And also on climate action, some of our projects, when we look at the science behind growing food, either through our trees, which is our browse production, or through growing produce, all of those activities actually have a positive influence on the carbon, the net carbon. So that means that when we grow trees and produce, they actually sequester carbon. So they're sucking in carbon dioxide from the air and keeping it within their bodies, and it's actually not impacting the environment, particularly when we're looking to grow trees in massive quantities. We're talking about tens of thousands of trees that we're looking to grow. And lastly, a huge priority with this project is connecting people. So how do we invite our community, our guests, academia, research, government into our projects and really connect people to where food comes from, but also this intertwined network of food, conservation, and animal and planetary health. So it's really important when we start any of our projects that we're thinking about all of these priorities throughout. And we're going to talk about two examples. But first, we're going to get over to my friend Ben, who's standing outside, excited to talk to you about browse, herbs, grasses, and the like. So here he is, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sweet. Thanks, Sarah. And hello, Ben.
Hey, how's it going, Jesse?
Oh, fantastic. So nice to see you. What a nice day out there.
Yeah, I know. I drew the short straw today. Much as we know that it's, winter's coming, I think in a week we're going to have some nice snow. This is a whole different world out here. And normally through the summer, this is filled with leaves all over the trees here. So one of the things that I get to talk about most, because my job is all about browse, browse is such a unique food source. So Sarah talked about it a little bit there, right? It's all about trees, like the bark, the leaves, all that stuff. The one thing that makes it really interesting for us at the zoo is that that's not something you can go get from the grocery store. I don't know the last time you've been in a grocery store, but you probably didn't see a bunch of tree branches hanging up in the produce section, right? So what we have to do here, this is a very unique food that we get to provide. And so us as a team, we really want to make sure that we're providing this. So all through here, when you look behind us, this is all browse that we've planted in the last 2 years, several different types. So this is all about learning as we grow. All this here, lots and lots of fun. I've had a lot of good times out here trying to learn how to grow everything, but we're harvesting from this all the time for our animals on site. So this is about 500 shrubs, 500 trees here. And what we actually have, this just gives you a good sense of scale. 500 trees looks like this. We actually have, through the nutrition department, a 10,000 tree plantation that's up the road. And that's where we harvest a lot of this browse material from our site. So think about those giraffes, think about the Indian rhino, the gorillas, the orangutans. There are so many animals that benefit from this. One of the big things about browse that a lot of you might not think about is that it's a really enriching diet item. I don't know if you think about a good homemade meal, like your mom and dad make you this lovely turkey dinner, you've got salads, it's all textures and it's all different tastes. And then there's fast food, right? A burger that it's gone in a heartbeat, right? That's fast food. This is more slow food. This is wholesome. This is all good stuff. It allows you to kind of get your brain involved a little bit. So all the animals on site, when they get browse, they're actually sitting there looking at the pieces that they want to eat. They're trying to see what's the best angle that I can eat it at. Is there anything left? Just like a corn on the cob, oh, I missed one over here. So that's such a huge part of what we do is it provides this enriching diet item that is very unique. The other thing about this, as Sarah mentioned too, the sustainability aspect is huge. When we think about how far our produce goes, I don't know if you've ever seen like your parents or any of your friends drinking coffee. How far do you think those coffee beans have gone through to get to the point where you're putting it in your cup? That is a huge interconnected world that we live in. That's part of what makes the world so cool. But it also means that we're constantly shipping and receiving and moving products around the world. not necessarily in the season that we're actually in. So something like a grapefruit, that's going to travel hundreds of kilometers to get to you as the person who eats it. Anything that we can do to be sustainable and to try and grow on site is a huge benefit to us, because not only does it help with our greenhouse gas emissions and our carbon footprint, but it's really helping us to know where we're getting our food from and what is happening between here and where it's being fed. Right now, we're only about probably less than half a kilometer from the giraffe house. So we know that from here to there, that's no time at all to get the giraffe their breakfast, right? So the other thing that we'll talk about, because I don't know, has anyone ever eaten a branch? Jesse, I don't want to put you on the spot. Have you ever tried?
I have never eaten a branch. I'd love to one day. If you invite me to the zoo, I'll come eat a branch with you.
Okay, so I do have a picture queued up. So at one point the last summer for World Giraffe Day, I got invited over to the giraffe house to help, just think of it as going over to a friend's house to share a meal. So if we have the picture up there, I got to take a little bit of time and talk to the giraffe and see how the meal tastes, right? It's always good to try out. But what ends up happening is we don't realize, like, as humans, we're not really built to eat this food. This is an evolutionary change for these animals. They are built to eat this food. Think of the savanna. Think of all those trees out there and what they're eating. That's a big part of their diet. And for us, the second picture I'm sure is coming up. It does not taste the same at all. There's a lot of compounds in there that really are bitter, that they just don't taste good at all. And so I tried to put on a brave face there when they invited me over for their lunch there, but it's really hard not to get a little bit bitter taste in your mouth when you're tasting that browse. So the second part of what we're going to talk about here, not only is browse a huge part of what we do, but we grow a variety of other things at the zoo as well. So a lot of the garden beds that you see when you come to the zoo, they're filled with all these beautiful flowers, colors, textures, showcase plants. But mixed in throughout them right now, what we're trying to do is increase the amount of produce that we're growing. So things like tomatoes, you can have some Swiss chard, even a lot of herbs, right? All of these things are being grown through our ornamental garden beds on site so that we're able to provide them to nutrition as a piece of their diet. Again, trying to reduce that footprint, knowing where our food comes from. You know the saying, you are what you eat? That goes just as much for plants. We're just 2 steps away, right? If a plant's not growing in good soil or there's a lot of other stuff going on around it, that doesn't necessarily go well either. But this gives us that accountability. We know exactly where this stuff is growing. And we know what care has gone into taking care of all these plants until we harvest it. So the other picture I have there is a little bit of our tomato harvest from this year. So this was actually just out here. I know it doesn't look great right now, but if you look to this side, Greg, all this area was actually tomatoes this summer. And then there's a bunch of fig trees up front under these mounds. I'm trying to overwinter some stuff that doesn't necessarily love our climate, this ice cold Canadian climate. But all of this produce that we're growing is a huge novelty for a lot of the animals on site. Whereas you might see a lot of this in your grocery stores, the stuff that we're trying to grow, not only is it about being sustainable on site and growing in a different way or being able to pick and choose when we're using it, but it's about giving novelty. So there's some things that we're growing that aren't necessarily found in the grocery store. There's really crazy tomatoes, big, small, different textures, flavors. There's this rainbow Swiss chard. There's all sorts of veggies that you can grow. And those aren't necessarily available, right? So I know one thing that we did this year was we grew a lot of different green beans for the commissary, for the nutrition people, because our Saki monkeys really wanted some novelty in their diet. So we were able to see like purple and green beans, something different. And that novelty alone, it changes the texture, it changes the taste, it changes the smell. And that's hugely beneficial for a lot of these animals. The final thing I'm going to talk about here is herbs. So we can kind of cue up that picture there, but I'll get Greg to just come on in here. So one of the things we do across site is we actually grow a ton of different herbs as well. This right here, I don't know, does anyone know what this might be? I always like to put Jesse on the spot, so we'll see if he can actually ID his plants.
I should know what that is, and I do recognize the leaves, but I can't place the name right now. Tell me more.
Yeah. So if you actually smelled it, it would change everything for you. This is lavender. So usually you'd see it in the spas. It's lovely that way. But what we did this year was we grew tons and tons of different herbs, just like this lavender. And the lavender helps us with pest control out here because it smells so big. It smells so strong. But it also was a hugely beneficial enrichment item and food item for a lot of the animals under our care. And that hopefully is a little bit of an overview of what we're doing out here. So I'm going to go now. I'll send it back over to Sarah, and we're going to try and meet you guys for the end of the display here.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ben and Greg. We'll head back to our team inside the giraffe exhibit and get warm. Come on back in. Hello, folks, again.
Hello, hello. We are back.
And so what we have in the background is our colleague, you might hear some squeaking. She's getting everything ready for Mastari to come back out and start munching on all of these amazing foods that's put up. So we have some great browse, some Ficus benjamina hanging from various locations. And there's Elise filling up one of the puzzle feeders for Mastari with some pellets. And then way up there in the back is some kale and some more pellets in that red ball. You can see that there's holes in there. And so one of the things you're going to notice is that all of the food is raised very, very high. And that's because giraffes have those beautiful long necks. And does everybody know why giraffes have such long necks? Any guesses?
Any guesses on long necks? I know we're a little bit delayed for our YouTube and Facebook crowd, but if you do want to chime in the chat, we've certainly got to eat things high in trees. So maybe it's to do exactly this and to reach up in the canopy. We've done quite a few programs with giraffes in the past, so might be a bit of a different answer than that, but do share a little bit more, Zoo Team.
Of course. So giraffes have evolved over thousands and thousands of years to have these very, very long necks. And you can sort of see that in the pictures in the background in the habitat, where they are competing for a very important food source with other herbivorous species in the savannas of Africa. And so they've evolved to be able to reach the highest of leaves. And so that means it leaves out a lot of the antelopes, can leave out some of the elephants, so that the giraffe are able to get the choicest leaves way up high. And so we offer the foods elevated for our giraffe, so that mimics part of their feeding ecology. And as Ben mentioned, one of the greatest things about browse is that it prolongs this feeding time. So Mastari's just checking out all of her goodies. She's deciding, ooh, which ones do I want to feed on first? And even just having this choice and control over her diet and what she wants to eat first is an amazing part of how we support the well-being of all of our species. And so giraffe also have long, long tongues, and hopefully we'll be able to see Mastari use that in action. Those long tongues help them wrap the tongue around a branch and rip off all of the leaves so they're able to eat it. They also have a very, very dark purplish-like tongue. And does anybody know why they might have a dark tongue?
What do we think? This is a really tricky one, and I love this answer. So if anyone does want to chime in, we can see what we get over the next few minutes. But black tongue, purplish tongue, chime in anytime. If we get an answer, Sarah, I'll pass it along, okay?
Perfect. I know you guys can do it. I believe in you. Think about how they are spending all day eating.
So
and that might be a really delicate spot.
We got an answer like really fast. Miss Riddle's class in Nova Scotia. Dark tongue prevents sunburn, which is really cool. Way to go.
Ding, 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 ding. Amazing. Good work, guys. I knew you could do it. So we have a specialized tongue. Their teeth are even unique and are specialized for tree eating and not grass eating, which is another evolutionary adaptation of this species. And I think one of the coolest things about giraffe is that they're actually like big cows on stilts. And I know that sounds so silly because when you look at a giraffe, you probably would never think of a cow. And that's because as a nutritionist, we like to think about the animal's insides. And their insides, their GI tract or their gastrointestinal tract tells us something about what and how they eat. So giraffe are similar to cows in that they have a very large forestomach. So their stomachs are really, really big and they're multi-chambered. They have 4 chambers just like our cows. So they're also ruminants. And if we're really lucky, if Mastari starts chewing and she gets comfortable with us here, we're actually also going to see her ruminate. And does anybody know what ruminating means?
By the way, I want to highlight that Miss Riddle's class said that they learned the dark tongue sunburn thing from Mary Ellen. So way to go, Mary Ellen. In our past zoo programs, people were listening last time we had giraffes on. So way to go. Ruminating. If anyone wants to chime in, again, I know we're a little bit delayed for our YouTube and Facebook audience, but feel free to chime in anytime and I'll bring up your answers on the screen as we do while you tell us a little more.
Okay, so what is unique about cows? When we stand and we watch a cow, what's unique? What are they always doing? They are always chewing. They chew and they chew and they chew, and then they swallow. And what do? They regurgitate that and chew their cud even more. Guess what? Giraffes are just the same. And again, if we're really lucky and she gets comfortable with us watching, we're gonna see a giant bolus, like a bowl in her throat, go all the way up to her mouth. She'll chew, 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 swallow that ball. You're gonna see go all the way down that long neck back into her stomach. And she'll do that again and again and again. And that's to help break down the food even more so that that big stomach, which has all of these amazing microbes that help her digest her food, have the most amount of surface area to be able to flourish. And that's how we keep our giraffe healthy, is by providing browse opposed to other types of she is excited. Other types of plant sources, because other things like grasses, if she were to eat that for her whole life and never have browse, she could get very sick. And so because she's evolved all of these physical and physiological processes to eat acacia, which is the primary type of tree in the wild that they're eating, we try to offer that and mimic that. Now, she today has a beautiful amount of ficus, which is certainly not native to Canada. But as Ben mentioned, we're growing tens of thousands of trees, either on site or at our browse farm locations, to help support that. Because at a chemical level, a nutritional level, the browses that we grow here, like willow or dogwood that we saw at the farm, are very similar to the trees that they're actually consuming in the wild. And that allows us to have very, very healthy animals. So I think we're gonna, I made it. Ben made it fast.
We did it, yay!
He ran really fast.
No car at all. There was definitely not a driving thing.
Oh no, definitely not a driving thing. I'm just very.
So we wanted to sort of wrap up and talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys could do at home to either help combat climate change in relation to food, or just help combat climate change altogether in order to help our conservation efforts here. So head over to Ben for a few of those.
So right off the bat, trying to grow your own food is it's a lesson in humility. You learn very quickly how challenging it can be to grow some things. But you appreciate so much more the amount of effort that goes into the food that you eat day to day. Taking that close to home and realizing that is a huge part of the process of being sustainable and taking ownership of what you are putting out into the world. On top of that, coming to the zoo and checking in and talking to people about this, becoming a guardian of wild as well, is a huge part of this, right? We are all champions of the wild right now. We're all trying to do our best to make the world a better place. And so the zoo, especially with programs like this is something that you don't normally see. And that's why we're trying to do these programs. It's the hidden zoo needs to go extinct. We want to show you that all of this stuff is happening, because you'll appreciate it so much more for yourself when you see something like this. This is actually from, all the ficus here is from our Indo-Malaya pavilion today that I harvested this morning for the giraffe. So that's all from site. That's all from our areas that you'll see when you come to the zoo.
Amazing. And a couple of other things is, as Ben mentioned, the growing locally really helps reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, but also seasonally. That's something that is really, really important. So one of the amazing things we have with our horticulture staff is they can grow a whole bunch of produce for us in the summer, which means we don't have to buy it and bring it in from places like California or Florida. We can really decrease our greenhouse gas emissions. But one of the really great things about our food production plan is, as Ben mentioned, is that we can grow really unique foods that otherwise our animals may not have access to. As Ben mentioned, you can't just go out to the grocery store and buy some of these foods. One of our projects that we're working with the horticulture team on is something called our conservation forage farm. And that farm is being planted exclusively to support a breeding and recovery program, Canadian breeding and recovery program that we have for Vancouver Island marmots. And so our Vancouver Island marmots are a species that is struggling to survive. There are only a few hundred of them left. And one of the things that we've learned about having these animals breeding and being released into the wild is that we're learning that they might have certain health conditions. One of them is a certain type of cardiovascular disease, and another is that their hibernation. So because they go to sleep for the winter, the long Canadian winters, their hibernation is impacted by being in this program. Both cardiovascular health and hibernation physiology can be impacted by diet. And so that was really the first impetus for starting to grow foods on site specifically for the marmots. So the Toronto Zoo paired with the Calgary Zoo, and we sampled wild plants from Vancouver Island. And we are having them analyzed so that we can look to grow those same plants or very, very similar species here at the Toronto Zoo. Our goal with being able to produce lots of these foods for our marmots is to be able to do a research project looking at the influence of a wild type or natural diet on these two health indicators, the cardiovascular disease and hibernation of the species that's struggling to survive. And so being able to grow these species that we cannot get at the grocery store, and that these species that we're trying to grow have unique nutritional compounds that support their health, there's no other way that we could be able to do that without growing our food here for that species. That is one example of a framework that we can apply for many of the species here. So another species that we're looking to better understand is our giraffe, but a similar Canadian species is our caribou. So we're starting a new farm location that is 20 acres large, and will hopefully be able to hold upwards of 30 to 40,000 trees, which is very exciting. And you can see in this picture, which is just an example of what our farm may look like. It's not our current farm. Our current farm is literally a field right now. Is that we have all of this opportunity to learn and engage in various types of scientific activities. So a few of them on the environmental side is that we can start to look at different ways of remediating soil health. And that's really vital because plants are absorbing nutrients from the soil to make them as healthy as possible. Another avenue of research that we can look at is once these trees are established and we have these 30, 40,000 trees, we can start to feed them to our animals similar to the marmots and start looking and understanding our animals' health and physiology better. So example for our trees would be giraffe or caribou that are ruminating species that eat a lot of browse in order to support their health. The more that we can learn about the animals here, the better that we're poised to support the conservation efforts in the wild. So it looks like Mastari is much more interested in staring at us than eating her delicious browse.
I don't blame her.
But we'd like to thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you learned a little bit about conservation, climate change, and how we grow food here at the Toronto Zoo. And we just welcome you again, like Ben said, to be guardians of wild with us. So plant your own gardens, grow food locally, don't throw out too much food from your kitchen, try to eat those leftovers.
Yep.
All of those small actions help immensely in our fight against climate change.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Sarah and Ben, for such a deep dive, going outside, inside, highlighting so many great things that the zoo is doing and beyond. I want to stress really briefly on the throwing out food note, it's actually pretty much the biggest thing that you can do as an individual to help combat climate change. The average in North America is about 30% of our food that gets thrown out between being farmed and us actually eating it. So choose what you can wisely. Eat fresh produce as soon as you get it so that it doesn't go to waste. Those things are really, really important things. And as much as you can have a vegetarian diet, that does have a really, really big impact. We've covered that in a lot of our climate change programs over the last few years. And we've already got a bevy of questions in our chat, so it's fantastic. The more the merrier. Keep them coming. Our first one has nothing to do with food at all. You guys went into a giraffe enclosure and people want to know how tall the giraffe is. So Mr. Hill's class, tell us more.
Yeah, so when you look at the giraffe here, I'm sure that the zookeepers would have a much better height on them, but they are, I think around, it's like 15 to 18 feet right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure Miss Starry's just a little shorter, ever since she's having a baby soon. So she's probably just hanging in bed and she gets a little tired.
Very exciting. Oh, thank you for that first answer. Our second one is much more related. So this is Miss Riddle's class. They want to know how many people work on gardening and food production at the zoo.
Okay, that's my question. I've got this. So we've got about 15 full-time staff that are operating all the different garden beds through the site. We've got 710 acres total, but about 235 of it that are actively managed. And our 15 staff that's full-time, we have about 30 seasonals in the summer that come in, because as the grass is growing and all the plants are vibrating with life, it gets really, really difficult to keep up with.
Yeah, great question, guys. Man, now they're pouring in. Okay, what kind of food are our giraffe pellets? Like, are they a specific kind of vegetable? Are they a mix of a bunch of things? Tell us more.
Fantastic question. I love it. So our pellets are actually very, very unique. The first ingredient in these pellets is actually aspen trees, which is a very unique product. So even all the way down to the pellets, we're trying to get as much tree fiber into these guys as possible. So they're very unique. They're especially formulated for ruminating browsers. So it's actually a moose-based pellet, which is a Canadian ruminant that lives in our forests here, that was notoriously difficult to have under human care. And so this pellet was actually developed, and we've started to use it with our giraffe to improve their overall health.
How cool is that? Thank you for the update on the moose, too. We've covered them a lot in the wild, including like yesterday. But to hear the story of them in zoos is really neat. Awesome. All right, Mr. Hill's class is a great follow-up. How old is Mustari, and do young giraffes and adult giraffes eat different things at the zoo? Do you have anything different to feed them?
So Mustari was born in 2013. And Jesse, I hate to do this to you, but I always make you do some fast math with me here. But I believe that makes her, let's see, 2023, 24, 25, about 13 or so.
Yeah.
Now here. And of course, like many mammal babies, I hope I got that right. I said it very confidently aloud. Like many mammal babies, the first things that the baby is going to be eating when they are born is definitely milk from their mom, or bottle fed if they need to for any reason. But I'll pass it off to Sarah to see as they developmentally grow if it changes as well.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great segue back to nutrition. I love it. So we are always prepared in the event that mom isn't ready to care for baby. So we actually have a specially designed giraffe formula, just in case mom isn't able to fully support the growth of any of her babies. But as they grow, you'd be shocked at how quickly they'll start to actually mouth hard foods. We see that as early as about seven weeks, and they start to transition. Now, that period of weaning is really long for this species. They'll start to slowly integrate other foods into their diet, usually starting with softer things. You will see them mouthing the browse or hay, but gradually they just stop. We can see, because we actually weigh them every single week, we can actually start to see and catch when they might need more nutrition from these other foods like pellets and browse and hay. The journey is very long for these guys. Their weaning period is up to like 10 months. And we just really let the animals take the lead. If they're still nursing lots and mom and baby are doing great, we just let that proceed. But we do have, like I said, a finger on the pulse with getting those weights weekly for them.
And that's why we have these fantastic keepers as well. It's important to highlight that this is a team sport. Everything about these animals' lives day to day, we have amazing staff that are constantly checking in. Sarah's team is checking in. They do body condition scores. They're looking at their diet, reassessing everything. But the keepers are here day to day, cleaning, watching, seeing what's going on with their acceptance of the food and how they're doing day to day. So that's a huge part of it as well.
What a nice follow-up to that. Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Sarah, for the detailed, nuanced answer. I love, too, how she's so clearly obsessed with you guys. Like, why are you here? What's going on? I really want to eat this now. So we'll give her some free time in just a few more minutes after a few final questions. We had someone ask about entomological surveillance. So can you tell us what that actually looks like when you're out in the fields or inside the plant facilities?
Yeah, so that is a great question. And that really kind of showcases that we're living in a complex world with complex problems, right? Any sort of insect problem on site, especially in our pavilion spaces, we don't use any pesticides on site unless there's an absolute necessity. So like poison ivy is the only one that I can really think of if there's something that we can't get rid of by manual means. Within our greenhouse space especially, but within our pavilions, we use biological controls. And what that is we actually release insects within our spaces that actually eat the pest insects that are eating our trees. So we're basically like making a whole ecosystem, a food web of sorts that stops us from having our plants get eaten. It's the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So that's a huge part of it. And on site especially, we do monitor, so that's why we have this stellar horticulture team. We're constantly looking at our trees, at our shrubs, at all of our garden beds to see what pests are eating what. But in a site like this, we are sitting amidst the Rouge National Urban Park. It is almost impossible to get away from something like the deer that come on site because they come up from the valley, or rabbits, who are going to be a prevalent thing. So we have to use the solutions that you use at home, maybe fencing in some of our garden plants, or that lavender that I showed you out in the browse area. That's going to be a deterrent because of the smell. So you try and find as many creative solutions as possible to make sure that pest control is a solution, not a problem.
Yeah. I love that we got that question. And Ben, I know you and I could do a whole other program on this, but I want to stress for kids, a lot of plants literally release chemicals to attract the predators or the things that are eating them. So as the plant is being munched by a caterpillar, many plants can secrete something that will attract wasps to kill the caterpillar, which is just mind-blowing. Some of the coolest science in the world that we know that in the last few decades. So
even when you look at something like the ficus that we have here, right? The ficus benjamina is not as sappy, but when you look at some of the other ficus species, their sap is like a latex, right? And when you think about an insect trying to bite into that, imagine biting into a hamburger and suddenly your mouth is full of disgusting sap. That is exactly what's happening to a lot of the insects with these trees. And that's a defense mechanism for them to really just push away pests as soon as they can.
Thank you for the glorious image of a sap-filled hamburger in my day. I appreciate that very much. Guys, we're nearing the end of the broadcast. This has been so much fun. I want to stress for our audience, too, we've got 2 more programs in this series the next 2 weeks. Next week, we're 30 minutes later than usual at 1:30 Eastern. And then the final week, we're back at 1 Eastern. You can check them out and sign up right there. Before we go, is there any final message you want to leave all our classes with today about food production at the zoo?
I think Ben touched on it, and I think it's really beautiful that conservation in food production is a team sport. You cannot do any of this alone. Horticulture, nutrition, wildlife care, all of us work together to make sure that the food production system can work. But conservation is exactly the same way. We need communities, people engaged in conservation to help us combat species loss as well as climate change.
And something else that I really advocate for always is education, constantly understanding what is going on in your world. It's especially for plants. I'm exposed to it all the time, right? You look at a plant and they're not speaking to you. They're not talking back and telling you about their history and the evolutionary history of what's going on or what's eating them. Educating yourself and understanding things about the world around you is such a huge part of this. And when you come to the zoo and walk around and realize that people like Sarah or myself, we're kind of hidden behind the scenes in certain ways, but that's no less complex than anything else that's going on that you see. That's a huge part of this learning opportunity as well.
Man, you guys are killers at the end here. This is so much fun. I hope all our audience takes the chance to check out the zoo. If you can go in person, it's one of my very favorite places in the world. We've got 2 other great programs. Please do check them all out on YouTube. Share with your family and friends. And if you're at home watching and you want to scream and yell and annoy the principal, you have our permission. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and bye for now. Thank you so much.